Who joins us now from Washington, D.C. Senator Shelby, how you doing today?
Fine, Cliff. I'm in Washington, D.C. The sun has finally come out today. We've had a little bit of rain. I believe it came from the south. We're glad to have it.
Yeah, no, it's good to hear. The weather might be good, but as far as some of the deals that we're seeing coming out of
They're
D.C.,
bad. They're bad.
It's not looking good. Talk to us a little bit about this latest budget deal that some of your colleagues have negotiated with the president.
Well, I think it's a bad deal, and I'll explain why. It was negotiated at the last minute in the dark corridor somewhere, and it's being rushed through Congress because the speaker's leaving. Okay. The budget agreement would increase the current Budget Control Act spending caps, and we know at least of $80 billion. That money will be borrowed. In other words, we go in and we're adding, as part of that deal, we're running the debt ceiling up another $1.5 trillion. So until March 2017, March of 2017, they're anticipating borrowing at least another $1.5 trillion.
My gosh.
Add that to the debt. It's unsustainable. And then they say, well, this is a good thing to vote for. No conservative Republican should vote for that, period, because it's just a bad deal.
Well, and I think not only is it bad policy, frankly, I think it's immoral for us to continue to pile this kind of debt on future generations. I mean, this is our grandkids, and their kids.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. And what we need up here, we need more conservative Republican senators. We have 54 right now, Republican senators. If we had 60, we could cut off debate, or we need to change the rules to 51, where we can make this president, who is one of the most liberal in the history of this country, veto a lot of these bills that we want to pass. We got to get them to him first. But this budget deal that you just asked about, and is now the subject of a lot of the talk in Washington, is bad for the taxpayer. It's bad for our future generations, and it doesn't solve anything. It's really a win for Obama. Obama wins here. He gets more domestic spending, and people say we're going to get more money for our national security. We are, but we're still borrowing that money.
Yeah.
And borrowing.
Well, it's these types of deals that I think have really frayed the public's trust in outgoing House Speaker John Boehner. But I think I'm also starting to hear from a lot of our listeners and readers over at YellowhammerNews.com some frustration with what they view as Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's complicity in these deals as well. Have you guys had any conversations, you and Senator McConnell, about the frustration with the process of how they have conducted these kind of negotiations with the president?
Well, we have, and of course, that is the Democrats and probably a majority of Republicans are probably going to vote for this deal, which I said is not a good deal for the taxpayers. The Republicans should all stand up and vote against this deal. And if we voted against it, it wouldn't pass.
Yeah.
And people say, well, we're going to shut down the government. I don't think so. I think that the president wouldn't want to shut the government down. But we've got to use a hammer sometime to leverage ourselves into a position, and we haven't done it. And I think some days you just got to go to the brink. You got to do what you got to do. And the house is on fire up here. That is the American debt, and it keeps ticking away. And it's going to destroy America sooner or later. People don't feel it every day, but it's going to be real. We know this, and they say. A lot of people said, "Oh, it doesn't matter." It does matter.
We're talking to Senator Richard Shelby. He's up in Washington, D.C. today. Senator, I was looking around as I was preparing for the interview, and you were running for re-election in 2016. And you have been in Washington for decades. I mean, you've been there a long time. But one of the things I think has really stuck out is I look at your Heritage Foundation score, it's 99%. So often we have folks go to Washington, D.C., and they change their stripes once they get up there. What do you think have you found to be important as far as maintaining just you are the person today that you were when you went to Washington, D.C.?
That's a good question. I think you have to be. A lot of people are sent to Washington or even to Montgomery. the legislature, and they think they've arrived, and they do this. But people come to Washington from all over the 50 states, and some of them buy into the Beltway culture and everything. I haven't done that. I realize that I'm an Alabamian, fifth generation, and I'm up here at the sufferance of the people. And I've been one, as you've probably seen, to go home. Very few U.S. senators ever go home like I do, hold a public meeting of some kind in every county of the state every year, nearly 2,000 meetings. And it keeps me on the ground. It keeps me listening to the people, because after all, I'm a senator. I'm a U.S. senator, but I'm first a senator from Alabama to the U.S. Senate. And I believe that's why we're here. We should represent America, but we're part of that America, and we should represent it with your values. And I've tried to do that, and I think most people know that.
Well, one of the issues that I've heard a lot from here, folks in Alabama have appreciated your leadership on. I've heard from farmers. I've heard from people in the coal industry that are just exasperated with the seemingly ever-expanding power of the Environmental Protection Agency. You recently signed onto a bill to fight against the EPA's proposed so-called Clean Power Plan regulations. Talk to us a little bit about why that's so important to the state of Alabama.
Well, it's important to the state of Alabama for a lot of reasons. We have a lot of people. We produce a lot of coal. We have historically for 100 years or more. And we have a lot of workers in Tuscaloosa County, my home county, Jefferson County, other counties that this is their job, and they're taking it away from them. This is the power of regulation through EPA, and I think the president has violated his trust, probably violated the Constitution, and we have to fight it there. And what we're trying to do is fight it in Congress and fight it in the courts. This is a big fight. Obama would like for us to just get all of our energy from the sun. That would be ideal, but I don't see that happening. And in the meantime, we create jobs by coal. We can learn, and we have to burn coal much cleaner, and that's what we ought to be working on. We've cut out enough jobs in America. We need every job we can get.
Now, you are chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, which is a powerful position and has a lot of influence over financial markets in the U.S. kind of financial system as a whole. You recently went into what a lot of conservatives would probably call enemy territory. You went up to Harvard and you gave a lecture about the DoddFrank regulations. Now, this is something I don't think gets enough attention because it really, really impacts families, folks that are out there trying to get a mortgage, or small business owners who need access to capital. Some of the regulations that have been put in place, you make the case, are crushing community banks that so many of us have done business with over the years and have actually had the opposite effect that they planned. They said they wanted to shrink the big financial institutions. They actually made them bigger. Talk to us about some of the reforms that you want to make as far as rolling back Dodd-Frank.
Well, access to capital for small businesses in America, starting in our state of Alabama, is very important for growth. Small businesses in America and in our state create about 80% of the new jobs. If you cut off the capital, or if you curtail any of the capital where they have access, we're not going to grow the economy. That's one of the problems today. I've been trying to give some bank relief. The banking system is important to all of us. Free markets depend on banking. And the ordinary person should have access to that. But if we overregulate the banking system, we as consumers pay for that. It's going to be part of the bill. It's going to be factored in the interest rate we pay. Mm-hmm. And people don't like that and shouldn't like this. And this administration, whether it's EPA, whether it's borrowing more money to spend, they're not conservative at all. They're spending today and putting the debt burden on tomorrow. On the banking area, going right back to that, I have some legislation that I'm pushing now to try to get some relief off of DoddFrank. You mentioned Harvard Law School. I was up there speaking. I was kind of in the lion's den, I went in there. But I'm going to speak to the Federal Reserve next week, and I'll share some of my thoughts with you there. They've invited me to speak on this, and I'm talking about responsibility. The Federal Reserve has a responsibility to the American people. They want all independence and no responsibility or accountability. You can't have it both ways. And we want the Federal Reserve to do well, but people, it's going to be like the IRS. They're not going to trust them.
That's right.
And if there's no trust there, you have a breakdown of respect for the government, which you can understand why.
Now, you've been an advocate over the years of auditing the Federal Reserve. Do you think that is something that is a real possibility, that we could really dig in and get a better idea of what's going on there at the Fed?
Well, it depends on what you mean by the term audit, Cliff. Audit, you would think you audit the balance sheet, and they do that now.
Right.
But what I think in the common parlance, you're talking about more oversight.
Right.
Of the Federal Reserve on their monetary policy, why they do this and why they don't. And everything's a big secret, and we understand that. And that's one of the things that I'm going to talk about at the Federal Reserve, members of the reserve banks and some of the members of the Board of Governors next week. But the Fed is too secretive, and they're not accountable to anybody. But I don't believe that since they're a creature of Congress, they should be independent with no accountability. I want them to be independent to a certain extent, as long as they're accountable for what they do. But we need more oversight. I've been pushing that in legislation of the Federal Reserve. I don't want to run the Federal Reserve. We shouldn't do that. But Congress should have a strong oversight of what they do, why they do, because it affects every man, woman, and child in this country.
There's no doubt about it. Talking to Senator Richard Shelby today. Senator, did you have an opportunity to watch the Republican debate last night by any chance?
I watched some of it, but, it was very interesting, but I had to switch back and forth because I wanted to know what that World Series score was. Too. We all did, and so forth. I thought the debate was interesting, and I thought for what needed to be said about the moderators and how some of them were overbearing, some of them were biased, all of them just about, against the Republican brand. I thought most of them did pretty well. Rubio, I thought, had some good shots. Even Christie had a good one about they were so rude. Even New Jersey's people from New Jersey.
Yeah, even by New Jersey standards.
That was cute. But Cruz, I thought he had overall a good night. But some of them don't have as good a night as others. But it's early in the deal. It's still 1st of November is coming right up, but it's getting there, and I think we'll know who the nominee is, and by the middle of March. I could be wrong. Some other people could hang in there a while, but I want somebody that's conservative, that's solid, that can win. Because the 2016 race is a tipping point for this country. If we win the presidency, and we stay in control of the Senate and House together, we can get some things done. If we don't win the presidency, and if we don't stay in control of the House and Senate, this country is going to go far and far to the left. Let's fight hard to keep that from happening.
Well, Senator, we appreciate your efforts up in Washington. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. We'll have you back soon.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.